So I think it's oftentimes handy for you. You get a little piece of a really long text and you don't know kind of where it fits into the larger piece. It's sort of ripped out of context. And so I have Persian Book of the Kings here. First of all, I just want you to see how thick it is. So it's a pretty big book, pretty dense book, and you're just getting a small little piece of it. And I want to situate the different important parts. So it's this version of it's like 854 pages long. So this is the end. And the part that's currently in our textbook, they always change things, is about, not really here, but let's pretend like this is around page 422, so it should be more this way, but let's just be okay with that. So the king that we're dealing with is Alexander the Great, or Sikandar. And that's kind of unusual that we would be reading this part. The authors have chosen a very interesting selection. The two parts that are most often anthologized is this part called the story of Sohrab. And that's roughly around page 186. And then the one that's second most often referred to is soon after that, at around page 217. And it's called The Legend of Saravash. I'm trying to read my own handwriting, so I may have misspelled it. The other thing I want to tell you is talk about the early pages. And the early pages, very, 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 very quickly, we hear about a lot of kings. So there's this one really evil dude called Zayak. I don't know how to pronounce him, but he has these snakes growing out of his shoulders. And then at some point we hear about his son soon after, Feridun. And I mean, it's like 3 pages between kings at this point. Whereas with this one, Sohrab, he enters the scene here, and there's several different kinds of stories with him. The part that everyone's really interested in is the part where he and his son, actually I totally screwed up. Rostram is the person who is in here the most, and he's the dad, and then Sohrab is the son. And the part that's focused on is Rostram and Sohrab sort of battle for 3 days or whatever, and they don't actually know who each other is. So it's this weird lack of recognition or lack of identity. It's very dramatic, and eventually Rostram kills Sohrab, not knowing who he is, and just as he's dying, he sort of realizes it's his son. In this particular one, no one, as far as I can remember, dies. This Saravash is kind of close to Joseph in the Bible and in the Quran. So he's very, very, very good looking, and his dad marries a woman who has the hots for him, his like stepmom. And then Saravash goes to the dad and says, I don't know who goes to, either the stepmom goes first or Saravash goes first. And basically he's saying like, your wife's putting the moves on me, or the wife says, your son's putting the moves on me. And the lack of recognition here is the dad has to figure out who's telling the truth. Is it the son or his wife? And I think he chooses wrongly. And so these two are the most famous excerpt pieces, and I think it's because they're the most dramatic. Whereas this is what we're going to be reading, and it's fairly long compared to these, and it's certainly long compared to the earlier ones. So this goes on for 20-some pages. This goes on for 3 pages. The other thing that I want you to know, and I don't see this, but the way that this whole thing is talked about is that at the beginning, the earlier stories are talked about as myth, and then as you move further, they get talked about as history. Which, and that the fantastic stuff is supposed to happen here, like the guy with the snakes coming off his shoulders is a good example. So all the sort of weird things that couldn't really happen in real life happen supposedly here, and then the more realistic things happen here. The reason I don't really buy that is I think there's quite a few weird mystical things that happen in what we read, and so I don't know how to square that with the idea that we're in the history period. But supposedly we are. Okay, so you get a sense of where it falls, that it's supposedly more realistic, that for some reason it's much longer than the earlier sections. And obviously each of these stories are about a king that ruled Persia at some point. So that's what they all have in common. Okay, guys, I think that's all I want to say. Enjoy it. Enjoy reading The Reign of Sikandar.